Right, let me grab my... I don't have my Quest Diamond plate up here. Do I have my other one? Yes, I do. Alright, well these are the stones I have of this variety. I'm going to show you this one first because it's the most unusual example. As you can see, it's got a real strong patterning. It's got kind of random to the pattern. I had a larger stone with a very similar patterning and the exact same colors to this, which I determined was not the same stone because it didn't operate in use like these stones do. But this one I'm almost positive is the same as these stones. It's just a very unusual example. As you can see from the sides, let's get this into frame. It looks very hard. It gets these deep gouges, these deep scratches, similar to the way that hard codicules do. But it doesn't really operate the way a hard codicule does. It feels very similar in use to a Thuringian, nice soft Thuringian. These stones are all very consistent in use. They all feel exactly the same under the razor. There's almost no variance between them. This obviously is not an original paddle. This one is one that I made for this stone. This was the first one I got. I got this one, if I recall, it was from the UK. It may have been from a US seller, but I got this 3 or 4 years ago. And at the time I just wrote it off, I figured it was a sandstone of some kind, very fine. I didn't have a lot of experience with Thuringians, otherwise I probably would have assumed it was an unusual Thuringian. But you can see this is the soil pattern that I see on most of these. It's it's fairly regular. It's layers, but it's not exactly circular the way downmores are. And if you look at the back, you can see that's why I thought it was a sandstone. It's got that kind of gritty fracture to it. Other people said because of the way the chisel marks looked, they thought it was a novaculite. But it's obviously not a novaculite. It's way too soft for that. Again, you can see on the sides, it takes deep gouges, looks pretty hard, but it operates very softly. And then I bought this one shortly after, probably a year ago. I started a thread about that one again to ask if anyone knew what it was. And while I was there, I happened to be talking about another stone with an eBay seller who isn't a member. And he asked me to look. I was helping him identify it. He thought it was a Water of Ire, I think, and I told him I didn't think it was. He asked me to look at some of the other stones he had listed to see if I could identify them. And this was one of them. He said he thought it might be a codicule. I said, you know, it could be a codicule, but it actually looks like a mystery stone I've got, so I'm going to be bidding on that. And I didn't have too much competition. I got it for a reasonable price. Again, you can see it's very solid, very thick. I mean, you can find codicules this thick, but it's not typical to find them like that. Look at the back side. It's got pretty much the same pattern on the back. Again, it's got a little bit of the grittiness to the breaks. Again, very hard on the sides. These do seem to have at times been used with oil, but they don't seem porous in the way that Thuringians do, which is probably the main reason I don't think that they are Thuringians. But like I said, they behave almost exactly the same. Let's see. Next one I got after that one was, I believe, this guy. I think I got this one next. This one I bought from a Badger and Blade member. He sold it as a codicule. I looked at it and I said, well, I asked him how he thought it was a codicule. He said, you know, he got it and he just assumed it was because of these. This is the only one I have that demonstrate these. I believe they're manganese. They look pretty similar to manganese spots on codicules. But again, it's got a little bit of that swirl pattern to the surface. It's got very thick. It's in a paddle, very similar paddle to what I'm used to. And it behaves exactly like these stones do. So because of that, for a long time, I thought that these were codicules. The way I eventually convinced myself they weren't is I compared codicule slurry to these under a scope. And the slurry from these stones looks very similar to Thuringians, which also looks very similar to a lot of very high grit natural stones. It's very regular, very fine. Judging from just scale compared to other things of known size, the particle size is under a micron from these. Whereas codicules, you'll get rather large particles thrown in there, which I assume are probably the garnets, which would be 10, 20 times the size of the particles from these stones. And that's from every codicule I've ever put the slurry under a scope for. Then I bought this one, again, exact same thing. Same little bit of a swirl pattern. It's a little less obvious in this guy, but you can see it up there. And again, it's in the same very old paddle, dark wood. Very light. So, I mean, I know it's not mahogany or ebony or something like that, but... And then again, this one actually has a very rough surface. It looks like it was almost fractured away, just like split from maybe it was a thicker stone, it split in half down the middle or something. but it's very dusty, and again, fairly thick cut. This is one of the thinner ones, but they all kind of look the same. Again, I got this one. This one I think I bought from, I think it was the UK, but it was sold as a Charnley, and it was a $25 starting bid I got it for. So I'm like, oh, it was pretty oiled up. So I'm like, Charnley for $25, I'll buy that. And it got here, and I was surprised it was one of these stones. And as you'll notice, this one I haven't lapped completely. They almost always are a little bumped, a little humped in the center. I guess that's just because they weren't lapped completely when they started using them, and most people didn't bother wearing them down. And because they were used, as far as I can tell, almost exclusively for razors, they didn't get much wear on them. And they don't really auto slurry. They don't wear very fast. They're very soft and easy to slurry if you use a slurry stone or if you slurry them on one another. But they're relatively firm and slow wearing to use. This one actually comes out of the paddle, but it's really tight, and once you get it out, it's hard to get it to go back in and stay in. So I'm not going to pull it out. But it's another fairly thin one. And then this is one of the most recent ones I got. It's unusual in that it has very little pattern. It's got a little subtle patterning to it, but it's very small, and it's also one of the most rectangular shaped ones I got. I got this in a lot fairly recently from the United States. Very thin again. As you can see, it's really hard. It looks to me very much like a soft light green or yellow green Thuringian. Very regular. It's a nice stone. I've used that a few times, and again, I'm convinced it's not a Thuringian. It's one of these. This one I've actually assumed was a Thuringian for a while because it fits the right dimension size. It's a very, very light yellow-green color, and it has no pattern. But on seeing some of the stones posted by the French forum members recently, I've started to consider that it may be one of these stones instead. It may still be a Thuringian, or it may be another very similar stone. But I'll just show it here just for the sake of posterity. This one, it's not quite a perfect rectangle. I don't know if you can see the side's a little bit fatter than the right side in the camera. But it was close enough that I thought maybe someone had gotten a chip and just sanded it down on the side. But looking back, it may actually be one of these stones, so I'm including it here. Now the sides, the best way to show the sides is probably this stone here. Let's see. As you can see, I mean, it gets real waxy if you polish it down. This actually has some oil buildup, but it doesn't scar, or it doesn't break away or crumble the way a soft stone typically does, like a soft codicule or a soft Thuringian. It takes on has a very hard regular character. It's very tightly grained, even though it does seem to abrade fairly regularly, or fairly readily when you try to slurry it. And for that, I'm going to do a slurry demonstration. I'm going to do a couple of these stones I have that have a similar characteristic. Like these two, I think there's no arguing that these are extremely similar examples of the stone. If you look at it wet, the pattern might come out a little bit more too. Yeah, but there you go. And then there's some slurry raised on them. You can see it's pretty easy to raise the slurry. I'm just doing the stones flat on each other so you're not getting a ton of pressure. You can see they feel when you're slurrying them a little bit sandy, a little bit grippy. Ooh, that's the danger of slurrying them on each other. But actually, in honing, like I said, I probably could not tell these apart from a Thuringian in use. This one's going to be a little awkward because, like I said, it still has a little bit of a round to the center. But And as you can see, there's not really a lot of steel being removed. This was Codicule slurry. That would be almost black already from that time I spent on there. And then on water. Alright, and this guy. And this guy. Alright, and then like I said, this one I'm not positive is one of these stones. I've been keeping it with my Thuringians and calling it Thuringian for a little while, but there is that one. Let me raise this up a little bit. If I could define the feedback of these, if I were to try, I'd say it's kind of like honing on what I imagine honing on something like baby powder. There's a little texture to it, a little sensation of there being something on the surface not being completely smooth, but it doesn't feel like that substance isn't abrasive. It doesn't really feel gritty or grippy the way that, say, honing on a very hard, very coarse surface Codicule would feel, or honing on something like a Tam O'Shanter would feel. It's you get kind of first off an audio quality to the razor moving over it, but also there's a kind of draw to it that's more like a strop than like a honing stone typically is. But they seem to be very effective. They seem to work almost identically to Thuringians, to the softer yellow-green Thuringians. But they have a lot of the qualities, a lot of the hardness of some of the harder paddle Codicules, which makes them a very interesting stone in my book, and is why I've been collecting them. If you want to see any more images of them, just let me know. And like I said, they have some real interesting characteristics that's made placing them real difficult. So that's my collection of these things.